This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Very big developments out there, if you want to call them big. I call them disgraceful. Let's get into it. But later in the show, we're going to have Sheriff Joe Arpaio talking about the situation with his ongoing pardon fight, and also SHARYL Atkinson, a very brave former reporter of CBS, now with Sinclair, also a great network. Not CBS is not great, but Sinclair is. They own many, many stations throughout the United States, and she, of course, was victimized by illegal surveillance, and just as an expert generally on what goes on in Washington and around the country. But let's talk about the so-called Inspector General report this week, which essentially exonerated nearly everybody at a high level. Look, I've been doing this for 42 years. I've been a lawyer for 42 years in the District of Columbia and elsewhere. I know Washington like the back of my hand. I predicted this. We know that the higher-ups are never held accountable. In this particular instance, whether it's James Comey, whether it's Rod Rosenstein, whether it's Page, whether it's Strzok, whether it's Orr, whether it's Brennan and Clapper, the intelligence agency czars under Obama, they've been let go scot-free. We knew that was going to happen. And that's why at Freedom Watch, we do what we do. We are your people's Justice Department. I don't care about the protests, so-called protests of Attorney General Bill Barr or the U.S. Attorney up there in Connecticut, John Durham. You know, they're basically just saving face right now. They're not going to do anything either. We know that. The past is a prologue. Yeah, they'll issue a report. It'll come out after the election. The whole thing will die off. The Democrats will realize that they're stuck with Trump, potentially, if he doesn't get impeached and convicted, which is possible as well, given the way McConnell is handling the Senate impeachment trial. He's not even going to let the president call his own witnesses. This is the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, pure, compromised, corrupt establishment. The president has always been anathema to his own establishment wing of the party. They'd like to see him going, like Caesar, like Brutus did, like the rest of the Roman Senate. But let's get back to the dishonesty which is pervade on cable news networks like Fox News. Not Sinclair, not some others, but let's talk about the dishonesty. Let's talk about, and you know that I'm really tough on them because, you see, I can't take it anymore. I can't watch this garbage on Fox News. I can't watch Sean Hannity. I can't watch Greg Jarrett. I can't watch, and I like Joe DeGenev and his wife, Tenzing. And, you know, but they make these predictions. Heads are going to roll with the IG report. There's going to be justice. Jeanine Pirro, the same thing. This is to boost Fox News's ratings. It's to get you to tune in every night and to watch. And in fact, Hannity's now up to 4 million in viewership. I have nothing personally against Hannity. Yes, he's an arrogant person. I found him to be very dishonest during my years at Judicial Watch, to be blunt. He would tell me things that simply weren't true, particularly with regard to the women that I was representing, whether it was Jennifer Flowers or Paula Jones or Juanita Broderick or the rest of them, that he was going to have them on his show if I didn't, in fact, give a stamp of approval. You know, this is the kind of thing that I really don't like. You know, get my book, Whores, Why and How I Fight the Establishment, because when someone lies to me, I take it personally. And I take it personally that Fox News, notwithstanding its news division, which favors impeaching Trump, that they lie to the American people. And it may be entertaining for you, but it's not entertaining for me because I know too much. I know what's going to happen. So I turn it off and I watch the Golf Channel and I watch Sinclair's Tennis Channel and I watch other channels. because, frankly, I don't like to be lied to. And that's why this show is so important. And that's why I want you to share this show, because we need to rise up. We need to ourselves be our own Justice League. I've said it many times. The American people are the superheroes. And we have to checkmate what's going on in Washington right now and take our own action. You know, just this morning I get an email from Judicial Watch. Okay, Judicial Watch says, we're in court today. Well, what are they doing in court? This is the group that I founded, My Little Baby. People still identify me with Judicial Watch. I'm no longer with it. I left in 2003 for the run for the U.S. Senate in Florida. I didn't win. I went out and I started Freedom Watch, which is what I do today. Freedom Watch does what Judicial Watch did when I ran it, hard-hitting cases. Now we have citizens' grand juries at Freedom Watch. But Judicial Watch's publicity is, we are uncovering the truth. Well, you know what? We know the truth. We don't need to uncover more of the truth. We know how corrupt the deep state is. We know how that deep state is still trying to destroy the president of the United States, the president who has done so many good things. And while I don't like who he associates with, whether it's Roger Stone or whether it's Paul Manafort or whether it's Rick Gates or others, and I've given him constructive criticism to start associating with good people, not people that are convicted felons, but people who are good and ethical. The fact is he's done a lot of really great things. And the fact is he calls it like he sees it. And he's honest with the American people about the state of the swamp in Washington, D.C. and around the country. And we need to do something to save him. We have the truth. Okay, get more documents, like I said. I mean, I say facetiously, hang them on the wall. Fit and hang them on the wall with pictures of yourself in tight shirts for whatever reason he does that. I mean, this is the publicity that gets out there every single Friday. I'm not interested in people in tight shirts. I'm not interested in documents. I'm interested in justice. Yes, we get documents too, but then we use them in hard-hitting lawsuits and citizens' grand juries. And forget about our Attorney General. He's just covering his big fat derriere, and so is John Durham in Connecticut. You know what? They could have already indicted all these people. Ask yourself that question. There was thought that they would indict Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director. Where's the indictment? A leftist federal judge in Washington, D.C., Reggie Walton, in a Freedom of Information Act request filed by someone else, even other than Judicial Watch, asked, I'm going to turn over all these documents of investigation, Department of Justice, unless you tell me that you're going to indict McCabe. And that passed a month ago in terms of the judge's deadline. No indictment of McCabe. So it's time for people to tell the truth. And Hannity and Greg Jarrett and DeGeneva and Tenzing and Jeanine Pirro and Lou Dobbs and the rest of them. Of course, Lou Dobbs is critical. I give him credit for that. But they need to start telling the truth to the American people, because we can't be lulled to sleep. There's a French novel, existential novel called Waiting for Godot, written by Ionesco. I was a French literature major at Duke University, and it influenced me a lot. Godot waited around for things to happen. And what happened? Tragedies. And the tragedy is this country's going down the drain. Tragedy is we have no legal system that works. The tragedy is we have federal judges who are yes men on the bench. They use a Supreme Court decision that has dicta that says they can dismiss cases when they don't consider it to be plausible. Well, you know what? Who the heck are federal judges to decide what's plausible or not before you even have discovery and potentially go to a jury in a trial? These people think they're kings. They're not kings. And that's exactly what King George III did in the days leading up to the Revolution. His yes men judges in London were meting out injustice to the colonies. And that's why our founding fathers rounded up the colonialists, got them coalesced, signed the Declaration of Independence, and started a great nation. I wrote a column about a week ago after I brought the case for George Zimmerman against Trayvon Martin's family, certain members, against the lawyer Benjamin Crump, against HarperCollins, who wrote this book, who published this book for Crump about white genocide of colored people, and linked Zimmerman to that. Who but Larry Klayman, and I'm not tooting my own horn, would do that? Because after I did that, I was threatened. I get these calls. I mean, you wouldn't believe the profanity that's out there. These people don't know the facts. You got Joey Jackson on CNN, who couched his statements so it wouldn't be totally defamatory, but it was defamatory, and he's fairly moderate, for CNN. They don't read anything. The fact is a phony witness was presented at the trial of George Zimmerman, and that is malicious prosecution because the the state prosecutors knew of that or should have known of it. And I love the state of Florida. It's my home state. But I had to sue the state because they put this man, that's George Zimmerman, through unnecessary risk of going to prison for life imprisonment. He's been destroyed. He can't get a job. He's got PTSD, worse than that. He can't go out in public. People shoot at him. Literally, people have tried to kill him. And yet, somehow, it's an offense by George Zimmerman that he wants to assert his rights. Yes, we asked for over $100 million, but that's primarily against the state of Florida, against Crump, and against HarperCollins. You know what? Who owns HarperCollins? Rupert Murdoch and his sons. Who owns Fox News? Rupert Murdoch and his sons. They allowed for the publication of a book that is titled, I'm paraphrasing, Open Season for the Legal Genocide of Colored People. Crump is African American. He's allowed to use the word colored people. I wouldn't use it. It's abhorrent in today's world. But he can use it, and he does it to whip up racial division and hatred. We're trying to eliminate that because that's the way to bring about justice. And you know what? Of the people that called my telephone number and sent me emails disparaging me, threatening me, 95% were white leftists. Most of them went to Berkeley, or maybe they went even to my alma mater at Duke, which unfortunately has become the Berkeley of the South. They weren't black people. Black people understand what goes on. They understand the injustice. And that's why George Zimmerman's case is in effect representing them as well, because this is a broken legal system. It's from top to bottom, whether it's the Congress of the United States or whether it's in the courts, federal courts in particular. Now, I'm hopeful in state court we're going to get justice. I'm going to be right back with Sheriff Joe Arpaio talking about other forms of injustice.
Fearless.
He's claiming he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm back with my friend, my colleague, a great American hero, America's toughest sheriff. As far as I'm concerned, he's still sheriff of Maricopa County because his legend lives on. He stands up for the rule of law. He stands up for the American people. He's not afraid. He takes the heat in the kitchen. He's one of many of my clients who have been smeared and vilified and attempted to be destroyed. But this is why he's a great man. So I'm having him on because I want him to explain his trials and tribulations with regard to his pardon, which President Trump correctly gave him, with regard to a simple misdemeanor finding in court in Maricopa County, in federal court, by the way. Usually it is federal court, which creates the injustice by Clinton and Obama appointed judges. Doesn't matter. The Trump judges are by and large worthless too. Believe me, they're establishment judges. So, Sheriff, explain to me what went on at the Ninth Circuit recently and how this character, Gerald Nadler, who now, as we speak, is on TV attempting to impeach the President of the United States, tried to do a number on you.
You mentioned Obama. This goes way back when Obama and Holder took office. I know you're very familiar about that. They started a so-called racial profile investigation. It took them 8 years, and they finally got me because of a biased judge and Obama prosecutors on a contempt of court, which is a misdemeanor. And I don't know if everyone really understands what contempt of court is, but that's what they got me on. Now, bringing it up to date, you do know, you mentioned that the president pardoned me on that contempt of court. I never asked for it. He did the right thing. He knew it was a witch hunt. And so here we are today. I'm still in the news. In fact, I think they had those 4 expert lawyers testifying a few days ago, they mentioned me. One of them said that Trump should be impeached because he pardoned me. Now you got the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, as you know, recently went to the Federal Appeals Court to invalidate Trump's pardon, along with 24 Democrats. So was it abuse of power now? They're going after the president, obstruction of Congress? It looks like Nadler and his band of rebels, I got other words to say other than rebels, main cause is to destroy President Trump. So here they are going after me and the president, and we seem to be sometimes the president and I traveling the same highway together without any collusion. It just so happens we both, think the same way. So you taking on this cause, helping me out, which I thank you for, Larry, because you take heat all the time. I just can't believe it. Here you're trying to do a job. You're a lawyer, been around a long time. They don't even respect your position as an attorney, officer of the court. What is this? So you know what it is. But I'm not going to surrender. I'm going to keep fighting this. I'm running for sheriff again. I've been sheriff for 24 years, longest serving sheriff in history of Maricopa County. And I'm going back, and I'm going to work very closely with the president and see what we can do for our country.
You're sheriff, yes, you deserve all the credit in the world. You take the heat. I take the heat. My other clients take the heat, whether it's Roy Moore, whether it's Jerry Corsi, whether it's Laura Loomer, whether it's others. I can name a lot of them. But Nadler truly is an evil person. He's head of the House Judiciary Committee. He filed an amicus brief that basically sought to nullify your pardon. He wants you sent to prison, for a simple misdemeanor, and you didn't even know what your deputies were doing at the time. And, they didn't do anything wrong, frankly, to be honest. They did nothing wrong. Where do you find illegal immigrants? At day worker sites? I mean, it's ridiculous. So, this is what we're dealing with. And others who filed an amicus brief, a guy named Michael Tiger, who actually was fired by Justice William Brennan for his subversive ties to communists and others. They file amicus briefs. This is unbelievable. But, I only have about 15 seconds left. We're going to keep everybody up to date. Sheriff, thank you for what you do for the American people, because without people like you, frankly, we're doomed. I mean, you need people that'll stand up, and you're doing what our founding fathers did in 1776. You're risking everything for what you believe is right and for this nation.
ARPAIOforSure.com, Larry.
God bless you.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with SHARYL Atkinson, also a great American patriot, someone who stood up for what she thought was right. Cost her job at CBS. She was illegally surveilled by the deep state. She now has a show on Sinclair. She'll tell you a little bit about that. Sinclair's a great network. Actually, they own about 200 stations throughout the United States. They're very powerful. In one day, they have more viewers than Fox News has in 1 week. So she has a tremendous reach. But I want to talk, SHARYL, about what happened to you with regard to the illegal, unconstitutional surveillance and what ensued after that, because it's relevant in the context of what's been going on this week with the Inspector General's report for the misuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. We know about that. I myself, representing myself and some clients, obtained 2 preliminary injunctions against Obama's NSA and the government for illegal surveillance. It gave rise to the USA Freedom Act. But there's still reason to believe that the intelligence agencies, that deep state, are violating the law. In fact, we know that they've illegally surveilled Trump, his family, his colleagues. The IG report does not recommend any strong action with regard to the criminality involved. That's no surprise, part of the deep state. But you pressed on and you brought a lawsuit and you stood up for what was right. So I introduce our listeners to SHARYL Atkinson, a great patriotic American.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll be filing a new claim in our lawsuit probably in the coming couple of weeks. We haven't given up, as difficult as the government makes it, to, try to get to the bottom of something like what happened to you and what happened to me. And I've always said what happened to me wasn't important because it happened to me, except to me. It was important because it was a symptom of I wasn't the only one. For 20 years, there's been good documentary evidence of these abuses. And by ignoring what happened to me, it allowed what happened to Trump-associated officials and candidate Trump in 2016. Until this stuff is seriously addressed, we can expect it'll continue.
Tell us specifically what happened, SHARYL.
I'm not a political reporter, but I do investigate stories that, politicians worry about or that do ultimately touch one party or the other or their interests. And such was the case with green energy, waste and fraud I was covering, the Fast and Furious story, which turned out to go all the way to the White House. Didn't know it at the time, that that's where it was leading. And long story short, I was fortunate enough to have some intelligence community connected sources who alerted me that I was likely being surveilled because of my coverage. What we all didn't know at the time, because it sounded kind of crazy, Edward Snowden hadn't come out yet, was the Obama administration, this is what the sources told me, had vastly expanded the surveillance it was conducting on private citizens. And both of these sources separately told me the public would be shocked if they knew what was going on. And I was able to, through a connection, have my CBS computer looked at forensically by an inside source who immediately saw the government software. We've since had about 6 forensics exams that have found the IP addresses the government used, a lot of other stuff, even though they tried to erase their tracks. So we have all the evidence. There's no question about that. But trying to then get action about it is just impossible. Department of Justice won't investigate itself. That's the problem. And then they're fighting in court using taxpayer money, endless taxpayer money, while here I am just sort of out on a limb by myself without the same, funding and support, trying to hold somebody accountable.
And then, of course, there are the federal judges who get there because of their establishment credentials, getting to know the right people, political contributions, and they're afraid because, frankly, we know that they've been surveilled in the past and they've got, stuff on everybody. And so there's no justice here. And this is the terrible part about what's happening right now. And layer that on top of the IG report, which doesn't really hold anybody at the top accountable, whether it's James Clapper, former director of national intelligence during this time period, or James Brennan, who was the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, or James Comey, the FBI. They were all participating in this illegal surveillance. So what you have here is a complete quagmire where justice is blocked, and yet I have reason to believe that this illegal surveillance is still going on even during the Trump administration. He doesn't know what's going on. It was used against him, the deep state, don't you think?
I absolutely think there's evidence to that. And I don't think it stops. I think it picks up as they need more evidence and more leverage as people get closer. I think that, based on my sources inside the intelligence community, was behind the reason they targeted Michael Flynn. It wasn't an accident that he just happened to visit Russia and we were worried about Russia, so we targeted Michael Flynn. They wanted Flynn because he was planning to come in, they knew, and clean up what he saw as surveillance and intelligence abuses. They didn't want that to happen. They couldn't have that veil lifted. And for your listeners, let me just say a little bit about what we know through the forensics they did to me, and so they're doing this to other people. They downloaded software, sometimes right outside my house in the neighborhood. We have a whistleblower and some good information about exactly how it happens in addition to the forensics. But they downloaded software that could monitor my keystrokes. They got into the CBS computer system to see what I was doing there. They looked at anything my family had in the computer, because it was not just my work computer, my personal computer as well, photographs. They were able to access my passwords, all my emails, everything I was working on in terms of CBS, but also they had the ability to listen in on my conversations. I didn't know anything about this, but they can use Skype to activate it when it doesn't look like it's on and exfiltrate files and turn on the microphone and hear what you're talking about. They planted 3 classified documents deep in my operating system in a place I didn't know they were there. I'm not a computer whiz. So those are just a few of the things we know that they did that they can be doing to anybody. And when it comes to Trump, I heard, maybe you heard this too, people claim, well, they were surveilling or looking at these sort of low-level campaign guys. Well, what people don't know, I guess, is one wiretap, let's say, of Carter Page, the FBI allows itself through these secret rules that it has to look at people up to 2 to 3 hops away. And what that means is they can then also look at the communications of everybody who talks to Carter Page, and they can look at all the communications of everybody who talks to them who never even talked to Carter Page. That's called 2 hops. And President Trump, candidate Trump, was definitely in that circle because Carter Page says he communicated with Steve Bannon, who we know communicated with candidate Trump. So this would be a way, and again, I was told this from intelligence sources, they sort of reverse engineer who they really want to get at and then get as close to them as they can if they can't get a warrant against that person. It's very, it's very scary.
It is. And of course, this helps explain, in my opinion, give me your thoughts, why former Attorney General Jeff Sessions did nothing and was so inert. Because, you see, he was communicating with the Trump campaign, both before and after the election, and he was picked up on all these calls, obviously, by the intelligence agencies, the deep state. God knows what they have on him, and that explains why he ran for the exits. It also helps explain, I believe, why federal judges are scared to address this issue and they try to get rid of these cases. Give me your thoughts on that. But I think federal judges are one of our biggest problems in the country today as a lawyer because they become so politicized and they protect the people that got them their jobs or who they feel can do a number on them if they get nominated for a higher appointment, that it's frightening. And, without them to protect us, who do we have to protect us? What sort of revolution can we do? Which we don't want to see. We don't want to see anything violent. But if the judges aren't going to protect us and allow cases to proceed, then we're left defenseless.
Well, I was going to say that, I've come to believe, based on what I've learned, that there is a vast surveillance program going on, like you said, against people at many levels. We know members of Congress have been surveilled. We know Senate intelligence computers have been surveilled, although our intelligence agency denied it, later had to acknowledge it. I mean, there is vast surveillance going on. I believe that could explain why General Petraeus was suddenly, they found dirt on General Petraeus. He was having an affair, if you'll recall, before Benghazi. But the way the story goes, they told him they knew about it, but told him they didn't think that it impacted his job. But they had that over his head for a year. And suddenly when he didn't go along with Benghazi, the plan to make it look like it was not a terrorist attack and he was taking a different path, he disagreed. All of a sudden, they revealed his affair and they got him out of the military. I think they punished him. But I believe that was possibly held over his head. And that's just one thing we know about. But yes, they could be doing this to a lot of officials and people and politicians.
There's many examples of it. And I know from a whistleblower that I represented that, according to the claims, the Chief Justice Roberts was part of the surveillance. And does that explain his flip on Obamacare at the last minute? Did somebody have something that they used that caused him to go along with the flow during the Obama administration, almost ruining our economy? This is frightening. This is Orwellian. And that's why Judge Leon, at a time that he was playing it straight, issued 2 preliminary injunctions. He called this almost Orwellian when we brought a lawsuit. But then when I wanted the case to proceed and go into discovery, all of a sudden he ran for the exits too. It's not funny, but if you don't laugh, you're going to cry because this is what we live with. Now, SHARYL, tell us about your show on Sinclair, because Sinclair, really is the alternative to Fox News. It's a great network. I mean, they let you say what you think. They don't censor it. Tell us about your show and how people can tune in.
Well, thank you for asking. I mean, I left CBS. I asked to get out of my contract well ahead of, they had fairly recently just re-signed me, but I just didn't see having a meaningful job there when I was unable to do basic investigative reporting, not just on political stuff. They didn't want anything that I had traditionally done. They were changing sort of the face of what the news was to be about. So luckily for me, Sinclair, which I'd never heard of, approached me and asked me to start a program doing exactly what I used to do at CBS all these years. It's primarily non-political reporting, but there is some politics. We listen to all sides. You'll hear from people on our program, maybe you disagree with, maybe you agree with, but you'll let them make their point, and we give them time to talk and give their most reasonable position on various things. It's not a shouting match. But more importantly, I think, we bring to light stories that the other networks and the other cable channels are not airing because there's no time. They're covering the same 2 or 3 stories all week long. You probably didn't know, or maybe your listeners didn't know, that MRI dye containing gadolinium, the common dye used in MRIs, there's been a huge new warning issued about that since we first started covering a story about it. It's been banned in European countries, the most dangerous form of this dye, but not in the U.S. The FDA has just issued a warning that nobody heard about. So there are stories like this that the networks won't cover, partly because of time. They're too busy covering these same couple of stories, partly because I believe there are conflicts of interest with advertisers and government influence. They don't want to do something that goes against a manufacturer of a dye, for example. So we just try to be that place you can go on Sundays and hear and watch and see something you haven't heard beaten to death all week.
That's great. Where can they tune in to find your show?
Well, if you go to SHARYL and click Full Measure, there's many ways to watch. You may have a station in your area. There's a station list. We're on Sunday mornings. You can watch on demand. We have an app called Stir. You can watch at fullmeasure.news anytime because we post the segments after we air. There's plenty of ways to find this program, even if you don't have a station in your community.
I might add with regard to Sinclair, because I've been on your show and others over there, is that Sinclair, people don't realize this, is actually bigger than Fox News in terms of its net worth and has a great potential here. They own a lot of the sports networks recently. So giving a little promo, because I think we need competition out there in the media. Obviously, I think most people believe that. But I want to thank you, SHARYL, for what you've done and for coming on the show. And we'll have you back. And God bless. Have a great holiday period.
Thank you for having me and for your moral support for the types of things that you've gone through, I've gone through, but really on behalf of the people that may not even know this is happening to them, but it's impacting them.
I agree with you completely. God bless.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots, fellow people who believe in the rule of law, fellow people who believe in the Constitution, fellow people who believe in the Ten Commandments upon which our legal system is based. I might add the Judeo-Christian Ten Commandments. That is a fact. That's not a dispute. Just read the Declaration of Independence. Our founding fathers looked to divine providence to get them through a very difficult period to form a new nation. And of course, we have a new nation. But in the article that I wrote about a week ago, explaining why I sued George Zimmerman. You can find that, sued for George Zimmerman. You can find that at freedomwatchusa.org and larryklayman.com. It's also, on Facebook and throughout. I explain how while I'm not Adams, while I'm not Jefferson, I don't equate myself with these people in terms of what they accomplished. I've been trying to accomplish that. I've done a lot of good things in my career, and I'll let you be the judge. I am their disciple. And it was John Adams who took unpopular causes with people who had been destroyed or were about to be destroyed and defended them, successfully defended them. He most notably defended the troops on Boston Common, the British troops who were provoked and killed a few colonialists. Now, by doing that and winning, he lost his law practice. He went on and became one of our greatest founding fathers. He said, without ethics, morality, and religion, you will not have a lasting liberty. Doesn't matter how many times you change your forms of government or rulers. He was correct. And of course, that's where we find ourselves today. We're about ready to lose our freedoms and liberties because we have corrupt people in Washington, D.C. on both sides of the political aisle. There should be more than one side, by the way. There should be some competition with political parties like there should be with cable news networks. But this is the reality of where we are today. And we are faced with a government that has become an outlaw government, renegade government, broken away from the American people, that play fun and games, go on TV, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, raise money, but could care less about what happens to this country. Now, most of them are elderly people or middle-aged, and they'll probably be dead, as yours truly will be, when this country finally takes and goes under for the last count. But we have to preserve this country for our children and grandchildren. And with this corruption, with this rot, with this stage 4 cancer, we got to do something strong right now. And Jefferson pointed out that when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there's liberty. That's why he advocated revolution nearly every other generation. He said it was going to be bloody. He said we're going to have to repeat performance from 1776. And of course, he was one of the architects of the French Revolution, which was much bloodier than our own. I don't want to see that. So we have an alternative to that. And that's why we need your support. And that's the verdict. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join our Justice League. Support our citizens' grand juries. Because you know what? Forget about Bill Barr. He's no messiah at the Department of Justice as Attorney General. Forget about John Durham in Connecticut. Certainly forget about the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, an Obama appointee who just basically covered up what went on. But we ourselves need to bring about justice. So you have my pledge, you have my commitment that after the new year, we're going to bring these people in that should have been recommended for prosecution, whether it's Comey, whether it's Rosenstein, whether it's the Lovebirds, whether it's McCabe, whether it's Clapper, whether it's Brennan. We're going to seek their indictment. We're then going to try them. We're going to legally and peacefully fry them. We're going to have them sentenced, and we're going to seek to legally and peacefully carry out the sentences on behalf of the American people. And this is what needs to be done. This is what needed to be done in the Old West. You didn't have a Justice Department then. It was the American people that stood up. It was the Wyatt Earps of this country that meted out justice according, not just to our common law, but to the law of God, to natural law. And that's what needs to be done. So you need to rise up. Forget about Hannity. Forget about Fox News. Forget about Judicial Watch. Let them have their documents. Let them play cards with the documents. Join Freedom Watch and actually seek justice. And we will break through with God's divine grace and his providence. We will break through at some point, but we better do it now because it's slipping away quick. And therefore, share this radio show. Get the word out. Round up the troops and let us peacefully and legally save this country. So I want to wish you all a happy holiday period. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. We'll be back next week. We'll wish that to you again. But in the meantime, God bless you. God bless your family. God bless America. And God save America. We are all one people, and we need to save this country now.